Heroin has reemerged as an epidemic in America, punctuated by the tragic recent death of Philip Seymour Hoffman. Tonight, father tells us of losing his son. Chris Christie says he unequivocally knew nothing about the GWB lane closure, but is that the real question? Is it the crime or the cover-up that will be investigated by the multiple agencies? Tonight, we will discuss. And the new mayor had some laughs last night, but will he still be joking next week when he's got to lay out his budgets when it comes to the unions who are waiting for overdue raises? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I am Richard French, and thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday evening, February 4th. Now, the untimely death of actor Philip Seymour Hoffman from an apparent heroin overdose has cast the deadly drug back into the public eye. After several years of decline, heroin-related deaths, they have spiked. In New York City alone, where the Oscar-winning Seymour lived, fatal overdoses increased 84% just between the years 2010 and 2012. Statewide, heroin seizures up 67% over the past 4 years, and the federal DEA's office says that they have seized just in New York alone 144 kilos of heroin last year, and that's at 20% of the nationwide haul, with a value in excess of $43 million. Now, this problem is not just confined, obviously, to our cities. Drug use rampant in suburbs, too, and a recent surge in heroin use in all places. Dutchess County has now even Senator Chuck Schumer calling on the feds here to step in and designate the region a, quote, high-intensity drug trafficking area. Now, it's not just in New York, of course. Nationally, we have seen a 79% spike in heroin use from 2007 to 2012. And if you want an idea of just how far it spread, take a look at what the Vermont governor had to say, Peter Shumlin. Last week, he focused his entire State of the State message on what he called a full-blown heroin crisis. Now, here to talk more about that is our first guest this evening, Robert Strang. Rob is the Chief Executive Officer of Investigative Management Group in New York City. He's a former special agent with the DEA. And Bob, thank you very much for a few minutes. And it's not enough, it's not an exaggeration, is it, in any way to say that this is a full-blown crisis here and an epidemic?
No, it's not. I mean, not only taking a look at the increase in the number of deaths, but just take a look in the last couple of days. There was a huge seizure right here in New York City. The purity levels estimated to be very high. Same thing in Pennsylvania and other parts around the country. So you're seeing an increase in purity all across our country.
Can you explain some of the math of this? Because all of a sudden, some of us, when we got introduced, even with the Hoffman story, we thought the expenses involved with heroin were much more. It seems that the price has gone down, which has increased the availability to such a wide population.
That's right, Rich. I mean, this is like the perfect storm when you think about it. And what's developed is that, take a look at the numbers. 80% of the first-time users of heroin have been using prescription drugs. You know, these very powerful prescription drugs for pain, as painkillers. So the opiates continue. Many of them were morphine users. But what's happened is the quality has gone up. Most of the heroin that we get now is from Mexico. Years ago, it came from Europe. Remember the French connection. After that, it came from Asia, where a lot of it was coming in through Canada and from China. But now it's all controlled, and then for a while from Colombia. But now it's all from Mexico. It's very pure. It's coming in very quickly. So you have the same distribution networks set up in this country, but what's happening is because of its purity level, by the time it gets to the street, it may go to 2 or 3, 4 different distribution networks, people making money, organized crime. By the time it gets to the street, it's still very pure. So the user who's used to using a less pure substance gets the heroin and overdoses, and that's the problem. The cost is down, the purity is up, and the problem is huge.
And when you say huge, we gave just a few examples from Vermont here to inner cities to suburbs. This is everywhere. We're even hearing from schools now, from both the high school level, even on the college campuses. It's spread there as well. The idea, I thought, was that heroin was a huge problem a decade or two ago, but it ebbed. Now it's back. Is that the problem that law enforcement is dealing with? Is this all of a sudden has spiked out of nowhere and it's everywhere?
It's true, and you know, you look that we have right now, we have 750,000 regular heroin users in the country, and that number is rising all the time. And this is a drug that's available in the suburbs, in the inner city, as you said, on campuses and schools, and it's very dangerous. And unfortunately, it's out there in a big way. And kids who had usually used prescription drugs, or young people, are now switching to heroin because it's less expensive, and the purer it is, obviously the greater the high, so they can snort it, they can smoke it, or they can inject it. But we need to educate kids through DARE and other programs and get the word out quickly, because if you have a young person today who's experimenting with these kinds of drugs, they could die very easily.
And the addictive nature of these drugs here can't be exaggerated either. Bob, I really appreciate a few minutes. I have a feeling we're going to be talking more about this subject with you in the coming days, weeks, and months. Again, that's Bob Strang. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rich. Thank you.